Welcome to Building Texas with Justin McKenzie and Somer Baburek. Sponsored by the Boerne County Economic Development Corporation and Das Greenhouse. And now, here's your host, Justin McKenzie.
I'm Justin McKenzie, host of Building Texas, where you will get to know the builders, creators, and entrepreneurs serving Boerne and Kendall County. Today, we have guest Jeff Flinn, who's recently joined the Boerne Star, so we'll look forward to getting to know Jeff and his story to Boerne and how he is building Texas. Every week, you'll learn about what is being built so that you have the vision, find helpful resources, and learn how to get involved. So Jeff, welcome, hello, and welcome to our community. I'm excited to have you join us and taking it what I think is an important role in our community and in the region of disseminating information, helping people understand what's going on in the news of the day. So look forward to really hearing your story and understanding how you've been building Texas in your career and how that led you to Boerne.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Jeff Flinn, managing editor, brand new here to the Boerne Star. I've been here for going on 2 weeks now, so I've got a lot to learn about the city of Boerne and the Kendall County residents and the surrounding newsmakers, as you will.
So what brought you to Boerne? Let's understand your path and really managing editor for a local newspaper. How does that career track work?
I worked in the city of Carlsbad, New Mexico for about 11 years in the 80s and early 90s, moved to San Antonio area. 95, was employed by the Herald newspaper, which covers the cities of it's East Bexar County, West Guadalupe, Church, Selma, Cibolo. You've all driven through there when you're on your way to Austin. Those are the cities I covered as a managing editor and a reporter. Came over here, February, my job ended there. Tooled around, did a couple things on the side, which were very intriguing and experimental and fun. Landed the job here, came across one of my former executive editors, Thomas Edwards, who's up at the Taylor Press with Granite Media. That's the headquarters. And our paths crossed and we started talking, and next thing I know, the offer was on the table and I'm here and glad to be here. New, brand new. When you're new, everything's new, and plural, just like we were talking earlier, everything's news.
Yeah.
So everybody, the old dragnet, there's 8 million people in LA and everyone has a story. Same thing. There's 19, 20,000 people in Boerne, and they're probably all a story or two within those folks. So I just found out online Ann B. Davis is buried here somewhere. The maid from the Brady Bunch. That's interesting though. So I mean, there's a story everywhere. So I've just got to be able to flesh it out and put it in print and run with it that way.
So as the media landscape has changed dramatically in the last, let's call it 10 years, how do local newspapers like the Boerne Star stay relevant, stay accessible, and stay visible to their readers?
It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag where we have to make that transition from the big spread where you get the broadsheet and you sit down and read the paper while you're having your morning cup of coffee, or pick up the paper on the doctor's office desk when you're in to see your physician. We have to make the transition to everything goes online, and it was rough for newspapers. I mean, there was graphs and charts and diagrams and studies done where $22 billion of media income became $3 billion, because when you buy finite paper inches, you buy a full page ad or a 3x5. It's not so on the internet. The internet, it's infinite. It carries on forever. And it's hard to sell ads when you can just click somewhere else and click on and go somewhere else. I think when you talk about the New York Times and the LA Times and Seattle Post and Dallas Morning News, you look at communities that have lost entire newspapers. I was talking earlier, there's a difference between newspaper and newspapers. Newspaper is what you have in your hand. The newspapers are the people who make it happen. We should never, ever lose those folks, because, I'll be at the city council meeting fleshing out the right from the wrongs, or the judge go to a school board meeting or a Kendall County Commission, or, cover that fatality where you can't be there, because you got a job. You're 8 to 5 or you're 9 to 6 or wherever you are, or whatever you're doing. We're doing that for you. So my angle is go in, get the news, and tell the story. I'm of the old school. I'm not an opinionator. I don't tell you in my story what I think. I go in and I tell you a story. Justin stood up at city council and said this. Greg stood up at city council and said this. Barron stood up and said this. I tell you what happened and let you draw the line. Let you figure out where you stand and what was happening. That's old school. That's journalism ethics, where no matter what I think, I may have to interview a person that I despise and do not care much for, but I'll interview them just as much as I do my best friend, because that's my job. So translating that into money is a big it's a big factor. How do we get that correlation between print and there's the salespeople are the ones that have to handle that. Most people make money. I don't make any money for the newspaper. I write, I put out the product, and it's up to our ad people. I got to put out the best product I can so they have something to go out and sell. So that's the big turnaround, is how to make the stories almost have to become more effective online. I'm not a clickbait guy. I'm not a clickbaiter. I'm not going to write the phantasmagorical headline that doesn't fit the story just to have you click on it. I want you to click on the story because you want to be there. And again, we got to find the most interesting angles for stories. Put them out there for people that will come on and read online. Whereas the newspapers, one angle I do, and I didn't do it before my earlier career, I do now, is I want to put as many people and faces and objects in the paper as I can, because if I have the gentleman I talked to today, Bear Oaks Ranch Kiwanis Club, I'll put a picture in. There might be 15 people in there, but that's 15 people who are going to pick up that paper to see their face. At the same time, that's 15 people who might be picking up paper who didn't earlier. They're going to read about the Kendall County Commission meeting. They're going to read about the short-term rentals. They're going to read about the fight, yes or no, yay and nay for Buc-ee's. They're going to read about things in the paper that they otherwise might not have seen. And that's how we make effective journalism, is get that story in front of people, whether they wanted to or not, because they're picking up our product.
Thank you for joining us today on Building Texas. We're sitting with Jeff Flinn, the new managing editor of the Boerne Star, and we're talking about the value and the benefit of a community having a local paper. So when you talk about the economics and getting people to read the paper, I think about really how do we get people engaged in the community and understanding the issues of today, whether that's Buc-ee's coming to town or that's what's happening with the school boards, the school district, as we get ready to go back to school on August 10th at Boerne ISD. We've seen a lot of people move from large urban centers to communities like Boerne. So in reference of looking at San Antonio Express News, maybe they got that. That's what they understood. I think in a town like Boerne, the Boerne Star has an elevated role because really you're the only source of local news today after we've seen some other papers go away. And to me, that we're losing diversity in the conversation. The Boerne Star has a bigger responsibility today as the only broker of news local to our city and county. How do you address that? How do you ensure that what you're putting in the paper is telling a full story or is directing your readership to get curious, get more involved?
I'd say it's a double-edged sword. Two angles. One, we talked about getting people engaged in the community. The people are the community. They've got to choose their fights. They got to choose what they become involved in. They've got to choose to put their kid in the swim program. They've got to choose which school they want to send their child to. They have to choose if they're going to be in a Kiwanis or a Rotary or a whatever organization. If they're in AMVETS or American Legion or Veterans of Foreign Wars, they have to choose to participate. And you can do as much as you want or as little as you want. It's almost like voting. We have 40% of people vote or 50%, which is kind of astounding that more people don't. Voting should be 100%.
We had 9%. In the in the mayoral election, we had 9% of voters turn out, which is shameful in my opinion, because that shows me a lack of engagement. And again, I think it highlights where the Boerne Star, who hosted debates for the mayoral election, who writes articles and opinions and editorials around the candidates. That's the responsibility I think the Boerne Star has. And I wonder, how do you go attract newcomers to town, people that are here in Boerne in the last 5 years and maybe they've never picked up your paper? What would encourage them? What would motivate them to say, I need to plug in? I want to choose, but I want to choose based on an informed decision.
When you talk about people moving in, that brings diversity from income. You look at houses I saw a sign, houses from the 700,000s. To me, that's ridiculous, but that is so right. That's the way things are going. people coming and buying homes that are of their price range, and they have a different take, a different look, a different perspective on things. We have to appeal to that. We got to find something that hits, not clickbait again. We got to find something that they are interested in. When people move to a city, I would say one of the first few things out of their mouth, besides the size of the home and the value, is, where are my kids going to go to school? And you always pick your schools. You pick your city by your school and your area you're going to live in by what school your kids are going to go to. And, I expect to have a lot of that. Crimes and cops. Crimes and cops are big. People want to know, am I safe? Is there a crime ring going on? Is there something I need to be aware of? The Kia challenge and the Hyundai challenge, kids breaking into cars with those 2 cars in mind, insurance companies all of a sudden saying, we aren't going to insure your car if it's a certain model, because kids are showing each other on YouTube how to break in your car and steal it. So we got to pick up on that, and we've got to serve our public. I think when people have questions, that's what we got to do. We have to serve to answer those questions. If people have questions and we're not serving them, what are we doing? We need to address what people want rather than tell them what. I'd rather answer your questions than pose my answers to questions that you're not asking. And also local, you mentioned that I worked for the Express News for a bunch of years. Previously, I came from the Herald, the coverage area, I-35 area. And that's why we existed, because the Express News didn't reach out there. Nothing against them, but they have 250,000 subscribers in a city of 1.25. They don't care about the Converse City Council or the Selma Church Cibolo Chamber. That's what I thrived on. That's local community. Community papers are really living now. There's been an upsurge in community papers because people realize the bigger papers don't service little communities. They don't service the neighborhoods. They don't service a subdivision. So there's been an uptick in local paper, because it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago, you want to start a paper, you had to have a press. So there's been a lot of nonprofits pop up online. There's been more backing of people. There's been more business people backing online newspapers because they realize, hey, they have nothing to lose. They have nothing to gain, but they have nothing to lose because there's not a side. They're not telling a story afraid to offend an advertiser. There are certain people in regions of the city I came from that if you did a story that made a certain sector angry, they were going to come back at you whether the story was fair or not. So again, we have to answer the questions that people are asking or have in mind. What is it with this water? What is it with, that if a traffic light goes out, that's not a question we're going to answer. We're weekly. It's going to be turned on and thousands of cars will have gone through it before we come out to press. It's groundwater. It's growth. It's zoning. Those issues, and Boerne is right up the alley on those, is you've got to get ahead of it. You got to zone. You got to have your regulations. You got to have restrictions. Boerne's going to grow. The people that here 20, 25 years ago, I hope you enjoyed it because it was a little tiny community. Cibolo and Selma. They're both, Cibolo used to be 3,000, 3,500, it's 30,000. They're going through the same thing on the other end of San Antonio that Boerne is going through on this end. And 10, 15 years, Comfort's going to be huge. It'll be right up the highway. It's going to go right up I-10. So that's relevancy, is we got to stay relevant by answering the questions people have. And we got to be relevant by reflecting our community. We are part of the community just as everybody else is. We have to be out there beating the street and talking to people and getting feedback and not being afraid to put people's pictures in the paper. And that's great if you're a school board member or you're elected official. It's not great if your name goes in the paper.
You're listening to Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. My name's Justin McKenzie, and this is Building Texas. We're here today with Jeff Flinn, and when we come back from the break, we're going to dive deeper into the importance of the local paper and community news. This is Justin McKenzie from Building Texas. Today's segment is brought to you by Das Greenhouse. Das Greenhouse is a business incubator launched here in Boerne to serve our local community. Das Greenhouse is a place where you can come to grow your idea. Our goal is to make Boerne accessible to people who are looking to grow a business, expand a business, or learn more about what's out there in their community and get involved. Visit us at dasgreenhouse.org or come visit us at 7 Upper Balcones Road, Boerne, Texas. Das Greenhouse. Well, Jeff, welcome back from the break. Again, we're sitting down with Jeff Flinn, who's recently joined us here in the last 2 weeks in the city of Boerne. and is the managing editor of the Boerne Star. Now, the Boerne Star has a rich history, and as I understand it, you've just digitized, we're sitting in an archive room surrounded by newspapers, but you've just digitized the archive so that we can really go back and look at the history of Boerne, which you were talking to before the break. You've seen Cibolo shirts in that area of San Antonio really explode. Growth is a conversation we're having in our city. And when we see 9% turnout from voters during a major mayoral election, it's really concerning because that tells me growth is just going to happen unencumbered. Whereas readers, listeners, citizens that can go out and vote and have their voice heard, maybe that's a more productive way to talk about the expansion. We see that here in Boerne. You mentioned Comfort before the break. It's going to see growth. Comfort's not a city, it's county, so it looks a lot different in how it's going to grow. Let's get back to the Boerne Star and the paper. How do you take the social media, instantaneous consumer culture that we're in now, and is really developed over the last 10 years, it's gotten much faster in the world. How do you take a step back and get to a Tuesday and Saturday newspaper that's still meaningful and valued by your readers?
When I came up through journalism out of college, a J degree out of college, and worked at newspapers, it was get the meeting, run back to the office, type up the article, it goes in the press next morning, and then you go talk about it. Now it's just the opposite. We're a weekly now, so the pace is a little different than a daily, but in a daily and weekly, you're now E-line first. You got to get it online. You got to get what you do, go get it online, and then the print comes next because the print's a couple days away. I just have a story idea that crossed my desk. I'm going to call about in a few minutes and get a story developed, and we'll probably put it online before it goes on into the paper. So that's one thing we're going to develop more of. I've got to work with my executive editor on being able to put things online through the Boerne Star's website more readily or more focused than just waiting till the paper comes out on Wednesday and then Saturday. We try to cover events that you can't or you won't, and we want to be there. Immediacy is an issue. Newspapers dealt with it when radio came around. Newspapers dealt with it when the TV came out. Newspapers have been trying to deal with it through the immediacy of the internet and everything going viral. My angle is, I'm not here to tell you my opinion of the story. Mm-hmm. A lot of news that isn't news organization is very slanted. I blame ESPN and CNN for developing angled news.
Yep.
Because they were the two first to go 24 hours. And at 3 in the morning and 7 in the morning, 11:30 at night, games are over and there's not much to talk about. News, same thing. CNN soon realized that you don't have anything new at 3:30 and 4 o'clock. So they developed sports personalities. They developed news personalities. And that's personalities, persona, person. That's where we got the introduction of news people putting opinions of the news into the story. Stephen Smith didn't exist 20 years ago. It was Greg Berman. It was the Berman brothers, the Bermans delivering the news, back, that kind of thing, telling you who won the games and that kind of thing. They weren't telling you what they thought about practice. Practice? You mean practice? The Coach Mora? They weren't telling you about what they thought about. They weren't saying how they hated LeBron James for going from Miami to Cleveland to L.A. They weren't telling you. They were telling you he went from Miami to L.A., the impact that has on each city and their teams. The total opinionization of news is what, to me, ruined news.
So you talked about you graduated with a J degree, mm-hmm. and I've heard it also said capital J journalist versus lower J. Help our listener understand, what does that mean? Because I will also take it back to your comment of it's not the newspaper, it's the newspapers. It's really, I think from your perspective, it's the people going out and collecting the stories.
I will temper that by saying I did get a Bachelor of Science degree, so I got a BS in journalism.
Okay.
So that's a little side note. But I did get degreed in journalism at Ohio University. Go out and getting news, I'll approach a newsmaker, and sometimes you got to ask the tough questions. You got to ask, hey, Coach, you guys got drilled 42-7. What happened? Did you drop the ball? You didn't literally drop the ball. Your quarterback dropped it 4 times. But, what happened? What went wrong? And the coach, they don't want to tell you. They don't want to say, well, I'm going to have to rotate my quarterback and running back because they can't hold on to the ball. They don't want to say that, but you're asking the question because everybody at home and everybody in the stands is asking the same question. What happened to them today? City councils are same way. A bond issue, if it gets defeated 65% to 35%, I've got to say, okay, what'd you do wrong? Why did they not like the bond issue? Because of the amount? Did they not like it because of what the bond issue was going for? Did they not vote for it because you didn't tell enough people? Did they not vote for it because it's raising their taxes? Why did the bond issue fail? And they've got to answer that because they say, I don't know. And I'll put that in. Councilman Flinn has no idea why the bond issue passed or failed, whatever it's going to be. So there's times we have to ask the tough questions, and a lot of places don't do that. It's not that they don't ask the tough questions. They're not geared toward it, or they're of an CNN does it, Fox News does it when they have a person of the opposing political slant come on. It's like they hammer them. They hit them and hit them hard. And the people who share their political angle almost like they're feather dusted. So, I don't agree with that at all. People are, if you're a newsmaker, you're making news. And then you got to watch that. You got to watch making the news. Because if you make it, you become a part of it. So you got to steer clear of being part of the news when you're in journalism. I don't mind being here, but I'm not going to make it a career. My career is over there behind that laptop in my office.
You're listening to Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. We're welcoming Jeff Flinn, the new managing editor of the Boerne Star, to Boerne and to the Boerne Star, and talking about the importance of local media. As we wrap up our time today, it's been a pleasure to get to know you. You were talking about your 310 rule earlier. Mm-hmm. We've got a number of people that would love to be featured in the Star. They'd love to write a story about their business, their school, their activities. How do they get in touch with you? How do people get connected with the Boerne Star in the right way?
You can bring oatmeal raisin cookies. Those are always good. Those always help get it. No, I'm just kidding, folks. I have a kind of a 310 philosophy I live by. As I tell people, send me whatever you want. Send it as often as you want. You can email it to me. You can text it to me. You can put it. You can shake my hand and hand it off an envelope, or we can talk while we're at the Flag Run 5K. We're standing by the pavilion. You can tell me then. I'll write on my notebook. I usually always have a notebook in my back pocket. I don't today. My 310 is, you can expect over a long run, if you give me 10 ideas, I'll probably be able to develop about 3 of them. And it's not, I'm not discounting anything that anybody else holds high, but if I have 12 civic organizations, it'd be great to have an article on each one of them. We did we had the United Way of Bexar County. We did a huge piece on all the United Way recipients. And that was great because a lot of them nobody had ever heard of. A lot of them, their kids have been in this organization, that organization. So there was repeat for them. But my 310 is, when you give me over a span of a week, a month, a semester, you give me 10 ideas, there's probably going to be 3 of them, maybe 2, maybe 3, could be 4 of the things that you tell me about are going to make it into the print. Because if I have 10 people feeding me 10 topics, that's 100 topics. And it's hard for 1 or 2 people to cover 100. So probably 3 out of those 10 are going to be something I'm going to run with and dig into and delve and solve and find out, because everything's important to everybody, or you wouldn't think it was news. You wouldn't approach it to me if it wasn't important to you. I'm not discounting or downplaying the importance of anything, but I've got to think, okay, if I put it in the paper, am I serving 6 people? Am I serving a whole community? That's the bottom line. Is if there's water conservation issues, how wide spread is that? If there's a series of potholes on Herf Lane, am I serving readers who drive by there? Or if it's potholes on Shorthorn Boulevard, which has 4 houses, is that serving it? Is that serving the public? So it's a judgment call. There's a delicate balance, but there's only so many. And that's one thing. If we start developing I can't say there's only so many pages. What it becomes to is how much time is involved. Am I going to go down to Shorthorn Boulevard and photos of the potholes and talk to the 4 residents on that street, and then go to the Boerne Public Works Department and talk to them and talk to the mayor and talk to the council about 4 potholes that nobody cares about except 4 residents on Short? I don't know if Shorthorn Drive even exists. I just made that up. But that's the opposite of Longhorns.
There you go.
Longhorns and Shorthorns. So That's for the A&M fence. If there's potholes on HERF, that's different. You know, if there's cars getting flat tires and running it all over the curb because there's huge potholes, that's an article, that's an issue. So if somebody calls, hey, Jeff, I've got this thing going on, blah, blah, blah. I'll say, okay, well, send me a photo, send me information. I'll see if I can get it in.
Well, we appreciate you joining us here in Boerne and giving your time and your talent to informing citizens of our community, our region, about what's going on here. I think the newspaper serves a critically important role in our public discourse and ensuring that the facts are out there, well known, and that people can form their own opinion and decision about how to move forward. So welcome to our community.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Boerne Radio 103.9 FM, and you're listening to Building Texas. This is Justin McKenzie from Building Texas. Today's segment is brought to you by Das Greenhouse. Das Greenhouse is a business incubator launched here in Boerne to serve our local community. Das Greenhouse is a place where you can come to grow your idea. Our goal is to make Boerne accessible to people who are looking to grow a business, expand a business, or learn more about what's out there in their community and get involved. Visit us at dasgreenhouse.org or come visit us at 7 Upper Balcones Road, Boerne, Texas. Das Greenhouse.
Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. Now let's head over to the Patrick Heath Public Library with Miss Constance for Children's Story Time. As the Patrick Heath Library is open today from 10 to 4, this is Boerne Radio.